Hi, everyone. This is Matt Johnson with Viral Marketing, and I'm excited to be here with John Pike and the Talent Genius. And welcome to our live hangout. And just want to say briefly that this is a 100% educational event, all about how to hire and recruit and keep the best talent. And that's what John is really, really great at. And so we're going to be talking with one of his clients, and this is an open and interactive session. So right on the Google Plus page here, you can submit any questions, and I'm going to bring them to John and his special guest. So first of all, I want to welcome John and thank you for being here today, and then let him introduce the guest to all of you.
Matt, thank you very much. Folks, hello, good to see you again on our monthly hangout. I am absolutely thrilled to introduce our guest today. In fact, I'm going to make a prediction. Of all the mastermind video calls that I've done, I believe this has the potential to be one of the absolute best, because when we did a little bit of interview last week, some of the content, I believe, is going to be incredibly applicable, something that you can leverage and apply to your own business, hopefully with equal success. Today our special guest is Amy Kite. Amy Kite has been very, very successful. Last year her operation did a total volume or revenue of $50 million. She's the only person that I know of that has actually personally listed more than 200 properties by herself. Now, let me just clarify that for a moment. These are properties where there were no builder sales, no foreclosures. This was 100% individual units. In fact, her total number last year was 275. So basically what we're going to do in the next hour is we're going to talk a little bit about some of the secret sauce of Amy's in terms of how she was able to do such staggering performance. Talk about a productivity idea that you can use to skyrocket your performance, how to build a world-class team around you, and third, the key to consistently hiring the best people. So Amy's also from the state of Illinois, so glad that you're with us today, Amy. Thank you for being our guest.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Amy, would you mind just telling all of our listeners how long you have been in the real estate industry and how long it was that you waited before you started to build a team?
I have been selling real estate now 10.5 years, and I hired my first assistant at year 3, which was definitely a game changer for me, because she certainly allowed me to produce a lot more, and she took off a lot of the things that I didn't like. She took off my plate. So year 3 I did that, and that was in '07, and then of course the market tanked, and so we just continued to muscle through for about 5 years, her and I together. We never had a down year in the downturn. Never did we sell less real estate than we had the year previously. And finally, 2 years ago, we brought on a buyer's agent, and so then it was 3 of us. And then now, of course, this year, physically right now, we are at 15 people.
Wow. So I think you mentioned on Friday that end of year last year you had 3 people, and today you're sitting at 15. So
Correct.
in a few minutes we're going to talk a little bit about how you ramped up such a significant amount of people in such a short period of time, and while not negatively impacting your own production. Okay, well, terrific. So I know that a big part of your success is based on the camaraderie that you have and being a part of several mastermind groups and different groups where you're able to leverage the ideas of other successful people. Would you mind sharing an absolute breakthrough idea that has literally helped to transform your personal performance? And maybe you could do this. You kind of shared a story with me last Friday about coming home one night after 7 hours of driving. If you could just walk us through that, that would really be, I think, very important for people to hear.
So I was in a position where I was doing, potentially 20, 25 listing appointments a week, and driving myself around doing that. And I would prepare the night before, and hop on the road that morning, go do all of my appointments, and then come home. And then I'd have to do feedback and everything from my day's appointments to get into my admin staff, and then prepare for the next night. So I came home in June, and I came home after physically driving 7 hours that day. So that became 7 hours of wasted time, in my opinion. And I went to bed at 2:30 in the morning, and I had to be up at 5:30 the next morning in order to make it to my next appointment. And when my head hit the pillow, I just broke down, and I told my husband, I said, I cannot do this. I said, not only is it unhealthy for me, it is unhealthy for everybody else who has to be on the road with me tomorrow morning after I've had, with any luck, 3 hours of sleep. And he said, well, you just need to get your driver. And that idea came to me from Frank Prindle out of a mastermind group that I have been a part of. He's out in D.C., and he had a driver. And when he heard how much I was spending on the road and how many appointments I was doing, he said, why don't you have a driver? And I just thought, oh, my gosh, that would change my life. And so I did. I put an ad out, and I was able to get an old chauffeur. And yeah, I interviewed, I talked to quite a few people. We got numerous resumes for that position. And you know, the one thing my husband said about this guy is he knew to shut up. You know, he wasn't in there to be a friend. He wasn't in there to talk to me. He was in there to do his job, which he understood was to drive me around. And so I physically every day get in the car with him. At least 6 days a week, and he and I go, and we may run from 6:37 in the morning, and we may go until 9 at night, depending upon how the appointments are scheduled that day. So it has been an absolute game changer for me. Now when I sit in the car, I physically work. And so when I get home at night, I may have a little bit of work that I still do, but I don't have hours and hours of work, and it's work that I choose to do.
Wow. So I have this vision, and it's kind of unfortunate in some regards that you're not doing this Google Mastermind in your actual vehicle, because that would have been pretty cool. But sometimes it's not. You don't have a reliable signal everywhere. But I have this picture of you sitting in the back, talking on the phone, having your computer live the entire time, having access to email, and just being able to do all your follow-up, to give all your communication to the office in terms of what the next steps and follow-ups are, and for you to just kind of take your productivity and your performance just through the roof, because you don't have all that wasted time with you physically having to be at the wheel paying attention.
Yes, and now I can concentrate on phone calls as opposed to, you know, I would find I'm sitting and attempting to negotiate a deal, and I'm having to watch the traffic in front of me, take notes on what they're saying and how we're negotiating, and then you pay only half attention. And so it's certainly become more productive for me, and I think, you know, just doing a better quality job now too.
Okay. So you've been then conservatively, this one idea or tip from Frank, which Frank was one of my guests earlier on in terms of how to build a buy side of the business. Great guy. You've been able to more than double your production over last year, and your actual unit was 275. Is that correct?
Yeah, I listed 275 this last year, and the year prior to that we listed 80. I had listed 80, so it has significantly changed my business and productivity.
So almost 3.5 times your performance prior.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're now at a pace where I am in 25 to 35 listing appointments a week, and I do have another listing partner now who is starting to take on some. I just met with her this morning. She's got 8 scheduled this week already. So
fabulous. Now tell me a little bit about the handoff that takes place. You have a couple of options in the office. Now, you know, Denise versus Mary, and why one versus the other?
Well, Mary strictly handles inbound seller leads. So when a phone call comes in or an internet lead comes in, Mary makes first contact with him. She's Monday through Friday, and then we actually have someone in the evenings because we were missing too many calls during the day, or, you know, we'd call people back and they weren't available weekdays during business hours, so we actually brought on somebody else who handles nights and weekends for us. And so between Mary and Michelle, they physically make and set the appointments and do the scheduling of me, which is not an easy task. Not everybody can schedule somebody because you have to understand how an appointment runs, time frame, location. They have to really work through and make sure that I'm productive, because if you have me driving from one end of Chicago to the next, you're wasting drive time hours, where had you set me in a circle, I could have been more productive and gotten another couple of appointments done in a day. So Mary strictly handles that end of it, and then when I'm done with the appointments, I follow back up with Mary, and I give her all the feedback from all the appointments. I tell her who needs listing paperwork. That aspect of it, listing paperwork, actually goes to Camille in our office, and she physically just helps get listing paperwork handled and sent where it needs to go. And then once listing paperwork is signed and we've got a signed agreement with them, then Denise kind of handles the sellers and communicating with them from there and keeping them informed of marketing that's going on and feedback from the buyers that have come in to see the house and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay, so a couple of points I'd just like to mention. One is today more than ever, I'm noticing that speed basically trumps everything else, responsiveness. So you found out and noticed that you had quite a good volume of calls after hours when nobody was there to take them, which really equates to a significant amount of missed opportunities. So you had a live person then, made an investment in somebody who had the scheduling that they could do in evening work, so that when someone calls, they're almost guaranteed to get a live person, or they can call them right back almost immediately. So that's one thing that I think is very good.
Our conversion rate when we answer the call is 85% to getting me out there. So 85% of the time when we answer the phone call, I physically will be in that, well, myself or my listing partner now will be in that appointment. So that is huge. And that's why literally my phone rings 5 different phone lines at any one time, so we do not hopefully miss any calls. I hate seeing that there was a voicemail left.
That's brilliant.
And Amy, where are these calls coming from? Who are the types of people that are calling you up that are converting at that percentage?
Yeah, so we do radio, we do some TV, we also have Zillow. We do a lot off from Zillow. We've got reviews and a number of listings there that helps us to get a high percentage of calls. And sphere of influence and other agents. Because we cover such a large area, even agents in Chicago refer me business because they know that I will handle it regardless of where it's at.
So this is another very common question that I receive. How do you know when the right time is to build a team around you? So you basically were on your own or with an assistant for what, the last 10.5 years, and just recently you moved from 3 people end of Q4 2014 to 15 people within about 60 to 90 days. So what was the tipping point? Why was it that you had a high level of confidence moving forward? And you basically mentioned to me it had to do with leads.
Yeah. So it actually, in Q2 2014, we added 2 buyer's agents. So at that point, we were at 5. And then the end of Q3, beginning of Q4, and then into the first quarter of 2015, we have actually added 10 people. And it does. It really comes down to leads. Every time I get a lead in, I look at it, and I still do manage, unfortunately, the buyer leads, a lot of them. And I'd get these leads in, and I'd go, okay, missed opportunity. I'm going to pass it off to my buyer's agents, but I know that they're not going to be able to follow up in a timely manner or probably service them to the level that they need to be serviced. And so I just continue to see that we're missing opportunities, that I don't either have the right person or I don't have the right person in the right place. And with that, I look and see how many times a week I'm missing an opportunity in an area. And that's where I go, okay, it's time to add somebody else. we actually need at least 3 more buyer's agents on the team at this point. And we certainly are in need of at least 2 more listing partners. So, and that's not even inside sales and everything else that we're still looking for. So
Right.
there's still a ton of opportunity, and every day I'm still looking at leads that come in and go, oh man, who am I going to put this on? Because I know that if I put this on, anybody at this point, either they're going to have to travel too far to handle it, or probably another lead that they have won't get managed quite as much. And my buyer's agents tend to do their own follow-up to a point, and I know that we're missing stuff that way too. So right now I provide them too many leads, and I've got to find some more help.
Gotcha. Okay, so a couple key points you raised there is, number one, I think what I heard you say is that you have to have the infrastructure to support the people that you have. So it would behoove people to look out for, or to be hiring for top talent, to bring people on board, but then have no leads to support them. Okay. In fact, a trend that I am seeing personally is that more and more of the successful kind of people across the country are hiring the best talented, the most polished salespeople, whether they have industry experience or not, closers, people that are in the zone, in the element. They've got the sales DNA and they just crush it. And you provide an environment where you take away the least favorite part of any great salesperson's role, which is the prospecting. You're providing them with warm leads. You've got an ISA to support and make the handoff. So that's something that I'm also seeing a very big trend, is the timing of when you're making the hire really should be in conjunction with being able to support them to a level if they're really good people. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to retain them. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. And when you hire talent, one of the things I mentioned to you the other day, when you hire talent, talent takes over. And I have been fortunate enough to actually hire one young kid. I mean, he's got a family, but he's living at home with his parents, and he literally has his 3rd contract signed today, and he's been with me 30 days.
Wow.
That is when you go, and he's only had his license 2 months. He was with another broker who wasn't supporting him, and I could just tell the kid had drive. He had some desire, and through the work that we do with you, we were able to glean that he probably had some real success opportunities there. He just needed to be put in the right position and put in a team that would utilize him, and that's where we were able to help.
Would you mind sharing with the audience, of all the buyers, agents, and salespeople that you have on staff now, how many of them were successful in their very first month, meaning they actually closed a transaction?
Yeah. So out of all of my buyers agents, all but one has had contracts written within their first month.
Okay. So let's back up for a moment and talk about what you used to do, kind of the traditional approaches. I think the first thing that you started off was getting the help of a headhunter or a search firm. If you could just kind of tell me what was the traditional approach you used when it came to hiring, and then we'll talk about what you're doing now.
So originally, I just relied on word of mouth. I'd put out there that I needed somebody, and I'd rely on somebody else to provide that name to me. And that is, fortunately for me, how I got my very first talent hire in my admin staff, Denise. And then I knew I needed more people, and I thought, okay, well, is it Craigslist? Is it, what is it? How's the best way to go about it? And what I found is I wasn't doing anything. I needed people, and I wasn't doing anything to get them because I didn't want to have to go through all the headache of having to go through resumes. I was a headhunter before, so I knew what I the can I was going to open, and I didn't want it. And so then I did go and hire a headhunter. Had mixed success. In fact, anybody who had come through there is not with me. So it really wasn't a great experience. Even though I had been one, I wasn't happy. And then came to meet you, oh gosh, a year ago now. It's just over a little, like a month, 13 months ago, I think.
Right.
And that's where We did the ads, so ZipRecruiter ads. We've done some radio ads, and put them through your process. And just going through that, I limit the number of people I even have conversations with. And that is my big thing, because my time is so precious that
Right.
I don't want to talk to somebody who isn't going to fit what I need at the time. And so
Right.
being able to go through them and look at their disc, their values, and their motivators, to have that insight into somebody is huge.
Right. So simply put, the vast majority of people that apply for any position, if you don't do some due diligence on them and put them through some psychometric tools, it's going to almost be a complete and total utter waste of time. It's going to be an exercise in frustration. Okay?
Yeah.
Not only are you spinning your wheels, but if you hire them, you have no level of confidence that it's the right person, and that who the person says they are in the interview is actually the same person that's going to show up first week, first month, etc. on the job.
You made a great point with one girl that we interviewed, one woman, and you said, I believe she's a Ferrari body with a smart car engine. And so when myself and somebody else interviewed her, we walked out of there, and I said to the girl with me, I said, so what did you think? And she goes, she really looks good, and there's just something missing. And I said, do you want to know what John said? And I mean, that's exactly what it was. She looked good. She was missing something. She just wasn't all that inside. So, yep, perfect.
Right. Well, again, the traditional approach, other systems, is to do background checks, to do phone call interviews, to do face-to-face interviews, and what we advocate is that a person has to earn the right to be sitting in front of you, and the only way that they do that is for them to take this diagnostic tool beforehand. And if their scores do not very, very closely measure up to the top performing real estate agents, whether a listing agent or a buyer's agent or an ISA, listing coordinator if it's admin or any other position, then we simply send them a regrets email which says, thank you very much for applying. We don't have anything on, right now that's a good fit for you. We'll keep your information on file. So when you fast track somebody or you have an assistant call somebody to interview you, you know that most of these people are going to be able to do the job and do it very, very well. Now, in the case of this one gal, this one lady that came in, she didn't have any drive. Her motivators were off. Her disc was great. Her talents were also exceptional. But if someone doesn't have the drive and the ambition and the internal fire to go out and make it happen, you're going to be constantly scratching your head thinking, she looks the part, she says the right things, why isn't she performing? So actually, Amy, I'm going to show everyone your scores, okay, to demonstrate how important a person's internal drives and motivators are. Now, the blue one is by far the most important. It's called economic drive, okay? You are a 99 out of 100, which it doesn't get any better than that. Never seen anybody score 100, okay? And we know that the top 10% of the salespeople in this country, okay, are highly economically driven. It is perhaps the single most important metric we look at. The second most important metric we look at is the red one here. This has to do with your achievement drive. How much will you assert yourself? How much will you basically extend yourself, not only to be the best that you can be, but to rival and surpass others and to be known as the best that in your industry. Okay, so her scores were on the lower side. So I said, interview her, but be careful, be looking out for this. Everything else is great, but her motivators are low. If she doesn't have a prior track record of success, she's going to be a wild card. She's probably not going to consistently perform at a high level, which is what you need. So excellent. Okay, now.
And John, just out of curiosity, I mean, does that change across industries, or is I guess what I'm getting at is real estate, because of the high rejection factor and the prospecting, the level of mental discipline it takes to do that, is that part of why that economic and the achievement motivators have to be so high to overcome that?
That's a great question. Pretty much in every industry, you're going to find that the two most important are economic drive and achievement drive. Now, depending on the industry, there will be some nuances that are unique to that specific industry. So let me give you an example. I was in software sales for a while. We're constantly selling ideas and concepts with the product not even being completed yet. So if somebody doesn't enjoy learning and they don't have a lot of intellectual curiosity, that's a key factor of success in terms of being a motivator. If somebody doesn't like to learn, right, and they're in a position like being a pharmaceutical rep where you're constantly having new drug launches and having to learn new product knowledge, then that's not going to be a good fit. The person's not going to be in an environment where they're going to be successful. Okay. So universally, high economic and high achievement drive are the most important, but there are some nuances depending on the industry. So good question.
Okay. What are the nuances between, you mentioned the two, so you've got the listing specialist versus buyer specialist. Is there anything in particular in those other motivating nuances that you're looking for?
The motivators are pretty much the same. What is, however, very unique and very different, and something that I'll show you as it relates to Amy's personality profile, you'll notice, now remember, Amy is the primary listing person, okay, and runs the company at the same time. Take a look at her D score. She is our D score is identical. We're both a 99 out of 100. The highest sense of urgency, very competitive, very driven, right? Very impatient. So as such, putting someone like her or myself in a buyer agent role would be a disaster. And here's why. For us, it's the thrill of the hunt. It's getting the win and moving on. It's not having to spend 2 or 3 days in a car with a couple that can't make up their mind and they're indecisive. Okay, that would drive us nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, because we just don't have that level of patience and tolerance with people, right? So am I reading your mail, Amy? Does that accurately describe you?
Yes, absolutely. Can I share a story?
Absolutely.
I had a high C engineer one time, and he would spend an hour in a house even though he knew that the house wouldn't work for him. And we're in this house, and he's already rejected it, and he says we have somebody else is coming in and they want to see it. And he says, well, just a minute, I got a couple more minutes. And so they wait for 20 minutes, and he's still looking around. And so we go out, and I said, you know what, let's let them in. Let's go sit in the car. So we go out and sit in the car. And these folks are normal, and they go in, and they're in and out in 15 minutes. And we're still sitting in the car in the driveway when they come back out of the house, and he looks at me and he goes, what did they do? And I said, they're normal, you're painful. And I said it to him just like that, and he got it. But you know, it's that D where all of a sudden I was done. I was tired, and I had let him do too much of that to me, and I was just honest.
Right. Well, I've often said, after helping train a couple 100,000 salespeople, that the high C is the most difficult personality style, hands down. An engineer, type of profile is classic because they are so slow. They are about all facts, data, and evidence, right? And it's the antithesis in terms of our style. Okay. Now, the other thing you'll notice is that you're a moderate in terms of your expressiveness, okay? So that's also very good. You don't want to be somebody that is too dominant, over controls the conversation, communicates too much, which is kind of almost synonymous with the used car salesperson. They never shut up, right? Which is offensive. But you are more of a mediator, a facilitator, a moderator, asking good questions, and then allowing them to talk. Yes or yes?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So
I'm often asking, why? Well, tell me more. Well, what do you think? Especially with my team, and I think that's really important, is I've found myself becoming more of an asker of questions as opposed to somebody who tells them what to do. You've got to ask them questions and help them realize. Same with sellers.
Right. Well, one of the things that I wrote down, and I'm going to quote you, put your name, I said this is a great quote. When you hire talent, talent takes over. And when you don't, you continue doing all the work. So when you
Absolutely.
don't have the right people around you, right, then you have to pick up the slack. So, and the other thing I think you mentioned is that you were losing too much by not having too many opportunities, by not having a team, and it was too much for you to not only for you to handle, but you also were not the right person to be handling what needed to be done because it wasn't the best fit, again, for your personality style.
Yeah, and that's one thing Gary Keller will tell you is you got to know when it's time to fire yourself. You know,
Right.
and I'm happy to fire myself, and I've got some more firing to do as soon as I find the right people to step in. So,
Right. Okay. I came across this quote just recently, and it said this. It's by Steve Jobs. He said this: "A small team of A players can run circles around a giant team of B and C players." And essentially, that's really what we're talking about here, right? So, in fact, I would say, tell me, why don't you expand on this a little bit, Amy? The smaller the company, the more important it is to hire someone who's exceptional. Because if you're, talk to me a little bit about that.
yeah. Oh man, I can really. This is so important, and this is so entrenched in my DNA. I was so blessed to have Denise join me. You know, 7.5. Well, she'll know exactly when she joined me. She remembers the anniversary. I don't. And that is an example of hiring talent. Physically, just her and I. So I'm the licensed agent. She's the unlicensed admin person. Her and I, in 1 year, sold 122 houses, just the two of us. That is where talent can do the work. And had I hired somebody who didn't have her talent, and the other thing is her and I both have very high capacities. We can handle a lot. And so we were able to get that done. But anybody else, it's funny, she sat in on a coaching call one time for admin people. And she said that one girl had raised her hand and said, well, I've got too much work. I can't handle all this. And the moderator had asked, how many deals are you handling? And she said 2 listings and 1 buyer. And Denise could have just died because, she currently, I'll tell you, she's got 60 active listings, and she's got, I think we've got 50 under contract right now. That is talent.
Right.
And so,
Absolutely.
technically, somebody else, it may take 3 people to do that.
Sure.
So that is where, when you find talent can change your world. And that's, Keller Williams says a lot about that. Hire talent. And,
Right.
having you screen people helps me through a lot of fluff and a lot of stuff that I don't need to even monkey with.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, speaking of talent, I want to show yours in comparison to the top 10%. This is a chart that basically shows 3 different dimensions: your people talents, how good you are with results, and how good you are with planning and problem solving. Okay. Now, for all of you that are watching, less than 10% of the entire population, millions of people that have taken this globally, are a 7.9 or higher in all 3 of these areas. Amy's scores are an 8.8. That's her lowest score, which is top 1%. Her second score is a 9.3, and her third score is a 9.3. Okay, so less than 10%, again, have scores that are 7.9 or higher in all 3 dimensions. Now, it's very common, or a lot more common, for people to have a 7.9 in 2 of the 3. Most of the time, people have a blind spot or a deficiency in one of the areas. Okay, so Denise is also in the same range. Okay, so we know innately how your brain is actually hardwired, which is what this measures, that you're in the top basically 1% of people in the world in terms of things like persistence, drive, resilience, the ability to handle rejection, self-confidence, self-starting ability, right? The ability to handle details, the ability to solve problems, the ability to connect with people, whether they're the CEO, the janitor, or anywhere in between. It's not a skill, it's an innate talent. It's a natural extension or expression of who you are. And that's why using this diagnostic tool is such an incredible game changer. So why don't you describe just for a minute, Amy, about, everybody but one of your people was successful in the first 30 days closing a contract. So for those that have not, you mentioned that you sat down with them, you go back to the profiles, and what does that conversation look like with that new employee?
Yeah, so we've had one who's struggling, and actually, I sat down with her after we did the team call that you did, reviewing everybody's.
Okay.
And I had 4 people that I intended to sit down and do a one-on-one with that day, and she was one of them. And so when I called her in, she sat down, and I said, "So how was the meeting?" And she said, "Amy," she said, "I don't have the self-confidence, and I don't believe in myself. When John said that I was in the top 1% in, whatever area you had said," she said, "I just sat there and went, oh my gosh, I can do this. I can do this." And so we had a lot of discussion, and she ended up crying about, who are you surrounding yourself with, and what are people telling you? Because John and I believe you can do this job. You don't. And it's come down to, she actually had recently gotten rid of a couple of friends who told her that I would never talk to her, that I was too busy, that she would never make it to my team. And unfortunately, the person she's in a relationship with also keeps harping on her that maybe she needs to go get a day job, maybe she needs to go, do something else. And so it's funny to get little emails from her going, my affirmations today are this, and my affirmations are that. And she's finally coming to the point where, and I mean, granted, she's really only been with me 35 days, where she's got something going on now where it looks like she'll probably have an under contract this week. But I think, through the stuff that you give us and give me, I was able to go into her and go, listen, it's not that you can't, because you can. So what's holding you back? And it came down to really a self-confidence issue and people just telling her she can't do it. And I said, you gotta find new people to hang around, because they're the ones determining your fate, not you.
That's outstanding. People are incredibly complex, as you know. There's no shortage of dysfunction, right? And the one thing I say in an interview, it's like the iceberg analogy. You only can access about 10% of what you need to know, because so much of what's more important is internal and it's hidden. It's below the surface. So when I do these calls, the vast majority of the time, when I told your team of about 12 new people, I said it's not a matter of if you're going to be successful, it's how successful you can become, because everything about who you are is perfectly aligned to be a superstar in that specific area, whether it's sales or admin. So it's a huge affirmation and encouragement, especially for a person in the first week or the first couple of weeks they're hired, to hear that out of hundreds of people, they've been handpicked, and that we know more about you than you know about you. Now, in the case of the person that's struggling, a lot of times you deal with things called negative self-programs, self-worth, self-confidence issues. It's interesting, I had a guy on Fred and Tammy Holmes' team who could never get past the threshold of 26 homes in 6 years. Long story short, had one of the best profiles I've ever seen. My first opening sentence to him, very first comment I made to him, if you're not making a multiple six-figure income, there's something drastically wrong. That's pretty much all he needed to hear. I only had a 5-minute conversation with him, and he went on to quadruple the amount of homes that he sold that year. So this does give you rich insight into people's capacity to perform. Okay. So let me ask you, Amy, what do you attribute the success to accurately, basically hiring these people skills and understanding people? You mentioned that you understand people in a way that you never have been able to before.
Yeah, I think understanding economic motivators are important. Understanding their drive. You know, another one that doesn't come up high on my chart is I've got one girl who comes up very high individualistic as a buyer's agent, and that was very important for me to know because I know that when she's not around, she's okay. I know when she's not chiming in, she's okay. She doesn't need me to monitor her and to watch over her as much as some of the others do, or she doesn't need the hand-holding. So I think those kinds of things are important to understand about people because that helps you better manage them.
Right, right. Absolutely. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, the last thing that you want to do is hire, 12 people, and they don't work in a self-directed way, and they need a lot of instruction and guidance and communication from you because you're out making it rain, being the primary listing agent.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm in a position right now that I tend to work too much still in my business and not enough on it with the people, and that's why I drastically need to get some great talent in. And I emailed you earlier today. We had a gentleman who interviewed with us last, spring, and he was phenomenal. He's sold all kinds of things before, and he came back around yesterday and said, hey, I have finished my licensing now, and I am so excited because I think he's probably my next listing agent. And that will help me to get out of being in the field quite as much so I can spend more time on my people.
Right, right. Absolutely. Well, it gets back to the whole point again. The smaller you are, the more important it is for you to hire rock stars almost every time because there's no place to hide. You need great people. You don't have the time. You don't have the luxury of wearing multiple hats, although sometimes you get dragged into it. But now you're at the point with your effectiveness and productivity, and you've now built this team where you need to devote more time to the human element. So by hiring the right people, you can now afford to do that because you now have a rock star that's going to be coming in as a listing agent that's going to be taking some of that weight off of you, so to speak. So let me ask you this. How much do you love, passionate about, do you love being a listing agent after 10 years of doing this?
I'm ready to fire myself. And you know what? It's not even the last 10 years because unfortunately for the first 8, I didn't do a ton of it. I've done a ton of it now over the last 2 years. I mean, when you're literally sitting at 25 to 35 tables a week, you quickly run through mastering something, and I guess that comes into my personality, wanting change in different things, and so that's where I'm at. It's okay, I've been doing this for a lot of hours for the last couple of years. I'm ready to get on to managing people. I'm taking a more overseer look at the entire team. We've got still talent that needs to be hired, and in order to best serve everybody, I need to get out of being at people's tables. It's
Right.
very important to my team that I get out of that because they need me.
Right. That's a good, in the evolution of kind of where you are with your business, you need to step back a little bit from the listings, and your people need you. You've got a lot of them. Some of them need to be developed and worked with, but the good news is you now have the confidence that they innately are very well suited personality, motivators, and talents to the job that they have. So we often talk about how specialization is so important and how it's absolutely crucial for efficiency. So maybe you could comment about that for just a moment or two about the people that are on your team.
Yeah, so everybody on my team is a specialist at what they do. I don't allow a lot of crossover. In fact, I will not hire somebody who wants to do too much. We have had numerous conversations with agents who want to be both listing and buy side. And, it's okay, and I'm sure that somewhere else you can do that, or you certainly can do it on your own. You just can't do it on our team. And so my buyer's agents are strictly working with buyers. They are they're out, with people in the cars. We have 2 showing assistants, and these guys are working their way up to being buyer's agents, and so they're physically in houses. We do have 2 people who strictly work with builders, and so their job is going around and specifically creating relationships with builders across Chicagoland. So everybody here is a specialist, everybody has a job, and that prevents people from saying, well, why do they get to do this and I don't? You know, it's just worked for us at this point.
Right, absolutely. So I'm going to ask you a hypothetical. I didn't talk to you about this, but with what level of confidence would you feel moving forward, embarking upon hiring a tremendous amount of people, a dozen within maybe 90 days or 180 days, conservatively, if you, without the outside assistance of any of these type of metrics?
No way. Well, for one thing, I would never have found the talent. I would never have taken the time, because you have to understand that for every one that I've hired, even now with the metrics, you know, even if I've talked to 5 for every one that I've hired, without the metrics, if that were the case, I mean, would I be talking to 20, 30, 40? I would have made a lot of bad hires. So that would have been a lot of churn and burn, and I probably would have just said, forget it, this isn't for me. Building a team doesn't work, and I'm not interested. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, just listing houses and just dealing with what I can manage, and probably would have just referred everything out. I don't know.
And, you know, and John, from the outside looking in, it seems like a really key piece of that, John, is the way that you're writing the ads, because you're starting off right off the bat, and you've got the experience in the copywriting along with the knowledge of the metrics to almost filter out a lot of the B and C players or the people that have the wrong personality types and profiles right in the ad itself, so that the pipeline starts off, I would think, fairly clean right off the bat.
That's right. It's equally as important to repel the wrong candidates as it is to attract the right ones. And you know, I'm really glad with what Amy said, because perhaps the most common or frequent frustration, opportunity, or biggest challenge of people like Amy, or in a role similar to Amy, is they've been maybe doing the business for maybe 5 to 10 years, and they're kind of tired and a little bit weary of doing what they've always done. They know that the key to building a lifestyle business, right, is to hire a team, but they know from prior experience and from some of their peers what an absolute nightmare it is and what the laws or average of success is. You know what it is? It's 1 in 5. You have a 20% chance when you're just merely looking at just a disc profile or looking at interviews of hiring a good person. Those are the odds. So, and that's something that it's really satisfying and fulfilling to see somebody like Amy, who's got so much incredible talent, so much potential. My gosh, she tripled her performance, right, in terms of her listing on her own while building a team to 15 in just 1 year. And it's rewarding to see her being able to kind of replicate a business that she can now afford to do different things and take a step back and now, you know, work on developing her people and building a strong team around her. So it's an exciting journey to be a part of. And you know, I think one of the things that I really like the most about Amy's success is her humility, and how many people have mentioned to me once they knew that I was interviewing her today, how well regarded and what a great reputation she has and how highly thought of she is. Do you know, when I was applauding her and giving her all these compliments for the performance, she basically deflected it to Denise, saying I could never do it without her. And that's a sign of an incredible leader. It truly is.
I couldn't do this without the team. I couldn't be doing the small portion without them. You know, in fact, one time, I've got to tell you, I was in an appointment, and I don't talk in I. I've always talked in we. I have for years. And it's never I, because there's more than me handling this. And so I had one guy, he says, you keep saying we. And I said, yes, me and my team. And it was me and Denise at the time. And he said, well, why isn't it you? And I said, no, it's not me. I said, because you get two for the price of one. I said, it is a we, and you will benefit from it being we. But this guy was taken aback by the fact that I wasn't saying I kept saying we, and I thought, man, is that somebody I want to work with who doesn't understand the power of 2 or 3 or 15?
Right.
So, and just to go back to what Matt said earlier too, it's something I've totally forgotten, but you're right. The ad is so incredibly important, and now that I've got those ads, I don't worry about it. And that was definitely one of those things in the beginning that, you write the wrong ad and you get the wrong results. You get the wrong people. You get a ton of resumes, and none of them are good. And so that's one of the things that I hadn't even thought about. An ad is incredibly important in what it says and who you're gearing it toward. And so we have different ads. John's written different ads for different positions, and that's imperative.
Right. That's true. And then taking that one step further, my advice is to not even read the resume, because they're either professionally done, which overstates the person's capabilities, or they don't have it professionally done and they're awful, and maybe they understate the person's capabilities. So where are you then, right? So what you do is basically you just lift the person's email address. Don't read their resume. It's worthless, meaningless. Their education's meaningless, okay? Their background's meaningless, okay? We want to get to the core of a person. So we just lift the resume, send each person a little bit of ad copy with some instructions on how to complete the profile, and let them know we're going to be promptly back in touch with them and thank them in advance. And that's it. Then the filtering starts, and we save unbelievable amounts of time. So now, let me just mention the why behind that. You see, most of the time, companies they don't have the revenue model or the business model where they will allow you to assess everyone on the front end, right? Because it's too cost prohibitive. But literally, in terms of what we do, for basically the price of 2 people that you would assess, you can have an unlimited access to these profiles, which is what we want, because we want to have the largest, cast the largest net and have as many people take the profiles, because really what we're doing is we're panning for gold. We're looking for those people that have the ideal benchmarks that line up to the top 10% of the other listing coordinators or the other ISAs or the other listing agents in the industry. So, well, Amy, what advice would you give to your peers who maybe at a similar stage, who have worked a tremendous amount of hours? Perhaps they're in a small team. Maybe they have 2 or 3 people in addition to themselves, and they're in the wheel, meaning they're doing the same thing day in, day out. They can't seem to get out of it. If something should happen to them, they'd be sunk. But yet they have all this fear and reluctance and trepidation about moving forward with hiring more people.
So when I started with the coach that I'm the coach I'm with right now, I just figured I was always just going to be myself and Denise. And he actually helped me get over my head stuff that said, oh no, I'll never leverage, I'll never hire, I'm good the way I am. And what it came down to is wanting to have a little more in my life, and knowing that there's a burnout. And at year 6 in my real estate career, I walked into my owner at that point and I said, you know what, I think I'm done. And it was a 10-minute conversation that he and I had, and we had done very little the beginning part of that year, and we went and made yet the best year we had. But I think that there's always trepidation in hiring people, and I think that it's because people have had bad experiences hiring people. And I think that it may be easy to hire the first one, and sometimes people get hung up even on the first one because they're afraid they don't have enough. Here's what you need to know. I look at everybody as what how much money are they going to bring to the bottom line? That becomes easy. As far as my costs go, how much are they going to bring to the bottom line? So certain positions you can easily equate to dollar amounts. Even like I have one girl who strictly works the database. It's easy to equate. If I didn't have her, we wouldn't have as many listing and buyer opportunities. With her, I've got X number of listing and buyer opportunities. They always say your database is your gold mine. Well, how many of us are actually using it? So is there somebody that you can put in there who actually physically goes in and works your database and makes you money? So those positions are easy. And what you need to do is that when you hire, what you need to know is when you hire admin, they free you up so you can be doing more dollar productive activities. So even if you can't necessarily go, okay, well, because of them, I'm going to have 15 more deals in a year. What you can say is because of them, I will physically be able to do 15 more deals in a year, and that will pay for them. And my staff knows I'm frugal. And so when we sit down in our meetings, we're constantly talking about dollars. And I hate to spend this money because I know you hate it when we spend money. But they know that everything has to have a return and a reason. And so when I go to hire, and having gone through and hired so many people to include, to hire Mary, who strictly handles inbound seller calls, I can directly attribute dollar amounts to her and her position. To hire Michelle in the evenings, I can directly attribute. So I would say that's one way, if you're as economically driven as I am, to maybe get past doing some hiring. There's other people who have more of a balance issue in life and they want more time off. And I think that you got to look at your time with your family, and the value of your family is a dollar amount. And what are you willing to give up for that? You don't have to go spend a fortune to make your first hire or your second hire, and consider bringing people in even as a part-time if you have to. Run them for 30 days, see how they go. I think that an important thing is, if you aren't going through a system like we have now, to have, to even put them on a 30-day, this is a 30-day trial, so that it's an easy out when it doesn't work. So I think there's a lot of ways to get past it. For me, it's always dollar amount. I always just want to attribute dollar amount or the fact that I can do more. Think about it. My driver, okay, he allows me to do two different things. He was a huge hire for me. One of them is I can be more efficient, and the other thing is my family has value. And so the fact that I can go home at night and play cards with my kids or do whatever. So, again, even he comes down to dollar value to me. And so people you can generally figure it out, but you can't be afraid to hire. You just got to do it the right way.
Right. So one of the things that you're talking about is, what type of quality people are you surrounding yourself with? You mentioned the fact that you have a coach that challenged your thinking to move past and break out of a current mindset so that you could develop more of a lifestyle business, have more balance, take a little bit more risk. Who are your advisors? Who are you surrounding yourselves with? What mastermind groups are you associated with? What type of access to successful people and successful ideas do you have? Okay, this is really the crux and the backbone, the foundation of why we're doing these calls, okay, and why we're highlighting many successful people, because they're getting out of their comfort zone, they are making breakthroughs, and they're seeing the results as a result, okay, of taking some of those calculated risks. However, they had a series of advisors and coaches, right, that are at the top of their game. And people specialists to help them in numerous areas, experts. So, Amy, great talking to you. Thank you so much for volunteering to being a guest. Wonderful to see and to showcase some of the success that you're having, and we really, really look forward to seeing your ongoing success as you're able to now take some time, take a step back, invest in the human capital that you've hired, and now replicate yourself and have even more success with the team of people around you. If somebody should happen to know of somebody that's relocating to the Illinois area, Chicago area, I know your website's there. Any other way that you would have some of your your peers get in touch with you?
Yes, so certainly you can reach us via email, which is amy@amykite.com. That's always an easy one. And our phone number is 847-877-9881. And if anybody knows of talent in the area or moving to the area, we're happy to help.
Awesome. Well, and folks, if you want to get in touch with me, perhaps the best way to do so is just to go to my website. My cell phone's there. A lot of other helpful videos like this are going to be posted there. It's thetalentgenius.com. I specialize exclusively in the real estate industry, helping people not only get the highest performance out of their existing team, but also, equally important, hiring A players consistently when you're looking to hire new ones. So I'm going to hand it over back to our moderator for closing remarks.
Thanks, John.
Matt.
Guys, if you have any questions, we'll put those links for you guys on the Google Plus page, so it'll be right below this video. And we hope that you join us for the next one. We're probably going to interview John as well as another client of his, and we're going to keep talking about these types of topics on what John mentioned on how to hire, onboard, and continue to get great performance out of your sales staff. So join us. You can, when we send out the email, you'll be able to also see this this whole recording, and it'll also go up on John's blog, thetalentgenius.com. So if you have any questions for John, feel free to post them right on the Google Plus page, and we can address them on the next Hangout. We'd love to see you there. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.